fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
What if I told you that the biggest constitutional crisis since Watergate is happening right now, and most Americans have no idea? We're not talking about conspiracy theories or wild speculation. We're talking about official documents, sworn testimony before Congress, and a special access program so secret that the Pentagon flat out denies it exists. The name of this program is Immaculate Constellation, and if the whistleblower allegations are accurate, it represents a massive system for collecting and hiding evidence about unidentified anomalous phenomena operating outside congressional oversight for possibly decades. This isn't a video about whether you believe in UFOs or not. This is about power, secrecy, and the battle between our elected government and an entrenched intelligence bureaucracy that may be operating beyond constitutional control. Let's start from the beginning. To understand Immaculate Constellation, we need to go back to 2017. That year, the New York Times published an explosive story revealing the existence of ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. This was a secret Pentagon program investigating anomalous aerial phenomena, led by an intelligence officer named Luis Elizondo. Along with the story came 3 authenticated videos filmed by Navy pilots. You've probably seen these clips. Objects performing impossible maneuvers, instantaneous accelerations, movement with no visible propulsion. The videos were confirmed as genuine by the Department of Defense itself. But here's the critical detail most people missed at the time. The exposure of ATIP didn't lead to more transparency, quite the opposite. Intelligence analysts believed that the Pentagon security apparatus interpreted that revelation not as a signal for openness, but as an operational security failure. The logical response from a threatened bureaucracy? Migrate the most sensitive operations, specifically those involving recovered materials and high-fidelity imagery, to a new programmatic shelter, even deeper and more compartmentalized, even more invisible. And that's exactly when the evidence suggests Immaculate Constellation was either established or significantly restructured. In 2017, the same year ATIP became public. This temporal correlation is critical. It suggests a deliberate rebranding and concealment maneuver to avoid the oversight that ATIP was beginning to attract. This isn't coincidence, it's a calculated move. The old program had been burned, so they created a new hiding place, deeper in the labyrinth of national security. Fast forward to late 2024. Investigative journalist Michael Shellenberger, known for his work exposing the Twitter files, publishes a new leak. But this isn't your typical leak based on rumors or vague memos. This is a comprehensive 12-page report written by a current or recent intelligence officer that was delivered directly to congressional intelligence committees. The document doesn't just contain stories, it contains names, locations, technical specifications of surveillance equipment, and most importantly, legally explosive accusations. The text accuses the executive branch of managing issues related to unidentified anomalous phenomena and non-human intelligence without the knowledge, oversight, or authorization of Congress for some time, possibly decades. And it goes further. It describes this situation as a criminal conspiracy designed to keep the elected government ignorant about profound discoveries and dire threats. Let me be crystal clear. We're not talking about a justifiable secret program for national security reasons. We're talking about an operation that, according to the whistleblower, deliberately violates the National Security Act of 1947, which established that Congress must be informed of all significant intelligence activities. The report describes Immaculate Constellation as a USAP, an Unacknowledged Special Access Program. For those unfamiliar with intelligence terminology, let me explain the hierarchy of American secrecy. First, you have top secret information, the most sensitive classification. Then you have SAPs, Special Access Programs, which restrict access even within the top secret level, only to those with a specific need to know. And finally, you have USAPs, where even the existence of the program is denied. Officially, it doesn't exist. In theory, only the so-called Gang of Eight, the 8 top congressional leaders on intelligence committees, should be notified about USAPs. But even these notifications are often made orally, without documents, without records, in meetings where members of Congress can't take notes or consult advisors. These are called walk-in briefings. Now let's get to the heart of the system. What exactly does Immaculate Constellation do? According to the Whistleblower report, it functions as a parent UASP, a centralizing program coordinating several smaller efforts. The term constellation in the program's name isn't poetic. In intelligence terminology, it suggests a network, a system of systems. And this constellation has a specific function: to detect, quarantine, and transfer all data about anomalous phenomena before they circulate through normal military intelligence structures. Let me walk you through how this works in practice. Imagine a radar operator on a Navy destroyer in the Persian Gulf. He detects an object on radar moving at 9,000 miles per hour, makes an instant stop, changes direction at a right angle, then accelerates to 18,000 miles per hour without emitting heat signatures from propulsion. That data enters the system, but before the operator can report it through normal channels, automated algorithms or specially trained supervisors recognize the performance characteristics of the anomalous object. At this moment, the chain of custody for the data is broken. Raw files are removed from local servers or receive classifications that exceed the original operator's access level. He literally loses the ability to access the very data he just collected. The data is then transferred to air-gapped networks, physically disconnected from the internet, under the exclusive control of Immaculate Constellation. If the incident had multiple witnesses, a sanitized version might be returned to the general system. The official report will say it was a drone, a weather balloon, radar reflections. Meanwhile, the actual high-fidelity data disappears into what the report calls the black hole of the program. This mechanism explains something crucial: why the vast majority of military and intelligence officers honestly deny having seen evidence of anomalous phenomena. It's not because they're lying, it's because the system was designed to remove evidence from their sight in near real time. Even high-ranking generals, if they're not in the program's inner circle, won't know the truth. The report makes clear this serves as a means of enforcing internal information security, ensuring that even people with very high clearances, but outside the magic circle, have no access. And here's where a sophisticated legal nuance comes in. Sources indicate the program may be controlled by the White House, but executed and administered by the Department of Defense. This hybrid structure exploits a gap between Title 10 and Title 50 of the U.S. Code. Under Title 10, which governs the armed forces, the Pentagon has strict obligations to report to Congress. But if the program is designated as a presidential covert action under Title 50, which governs intelligence operations, managers can argue they're exempt from reporting to regular defense committees. They only answer to an extremely restricted circle in the White House and National Security Council. This creates de facto immunity from legislative oversight, a government within the government. But the report doesn't just describe bureaucratic procedures. It describes specific visual evidence supposedly contained in Immaculate Constellation's files. And these descriptions are absolutely shocking. Let's start with the F-22 Raptor incident. The document reports that an F-22 fighter, the most advanced air superiority platform in the world, was forced out of its patrol area by multiple orb-shaped objects. For context, the F-22 was designed to dominate any airspace on the planet. Its radar invisible, super cruises, armed with long-range missiles. When the report uses the term forced out, that implies absolute tactical inferiority. This could have happened three ways. First, the Orbs electronically neutralized the fighter's sensors or weapon systems through jamming. Second, they demonstrated flight capabilities so superior that any engagement would be impossible or suicidal. Third, they executed a show of force that compelled the pilot to retreat to preserve the aircraft. Any of these options destroys the narrative that anomalous phenomena are harmless or scientific curiosities. If they can deny airspace to a fifth-generation fighter, they represent a direct threat to American air superiority. But the most impressive evidence described in the report is the so-called Kuwait Orb video. According to the document, this is a high-definition color video, approximately 13 minutes long, filmed from a military helicopter about 20 miles off the coast of Kuwait. The video shows a white orb emerging from the ocean. That's right, coming out of the water, performing a perfect transition between the hydrosphere and atmosphere. Midway through the footage, this orb is joined by a second orb that briefly enters the frame from the left before rapidly exiting at high speed. And here's the detail that confirms authenticity. The video was discovered on SIPRnet, the Secure Internet Protocol Router Network. This is the Department of Defense's classified network used to transmit secret orders and information. It's not a place where fake videos or fan-created content ends up. This is government secure communications infrastructure. The ability to operate both submerged and airborne is one of the so-called 5 classic observables of anomalous phenomena. Transmedium movement, meaning transition between different environments without performance loss, and without visible control surfaces, no wings, no propellers, no identifiable thermal exhaust. The location is also significant. Kuwait is a high-tension military zone with intense monitoring, close to Iraq, Iran, and other strategic areas. The presence of these objects there suggests they actively monitor U.S. military deployments in the Middle East. The report also validates earlier leaks, like the so-called jellyfish video filmed in Iraq. This video, released by journalist Jeremy Corbell, shows an object that changes temperature, appearing black then white on infrared cameras, crosses a military base undetected by conventional radar, then dives into water, emerging 17 minutes later to accelerate at hypersonic speed. Another described incident involves the crew of a nuclear aircraft carrier observing a small orange or red sphere rapidly descending from high altitude to hover just 100 to 200 yards above the flight deck. This is a critical security breach. A nuclear carrier holds dozens of aircraft, thousands of tons of munitions, and an atomic reactor. The idea of an unknown object hovering over it is an operational nightmare. The report isn't based solely on videos. It details 7 categories of evidence collected by the program: satellite imagery and infrared sensors, reports from pilots and radar operators, electromagnetic and radio signatures captured by electronic listening systems, physical data about propulsion and air displacement, internal memos and email chains proving administrative management of the secret, and historical records connecting the current program to efforts from decades past. This multi-source taxonomy is vital. It indicates the program doesn't rely on a single questionable data source, but performs what modern intelligence calls multi-sensor fusion. It's the gold standard of intelligence confirmation. Faced with these devastatingly specific accusations, how did the Department of Defense respond? With a denial that's a case study in calculated bureaucratic language. Pentagon spokesperson Susan Goff issued the following official statement. The Department of Defense has no record, present or historical, of any type of SAP called Immaculate Constellation. To a casual observer, this sounds like a definitive denial, but for analysts trained in intelligence language, this sentence is carefully constructed to be technically true while substantively misleading. It's what's called a non-denial denial. Let's break it down. First, name specificity. If the program changed names the previous week, say to Celestial Eagle or any other code name, Goff's statement is perfectly true, even though the program exists and does exactly what the report describes. Second, record jurisdiction. If the program is a presidential covert action or administered by the CIA using DoD assets, the Pentagon technically might not have the primary record of the SAP. It would be in White House or Central Intelligence Agency files. Third, program definition. If the effort isn't technically classified as an SAP per se, but as a CAP, Controlled Access Program, or operating under a different statute like a USAP, Waived Unacknowledged SAP, the denial remains valid in the letter of the law, but completely false in spirit. And there's another institutional actor in this story, AARO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. This office was created by Congress specifically to investigate anomalous phenomena and provide transparency. But the Whistleblower report explicitly states that high-quality evidence from Immaculate Constellation has not been shared with AARO. This means AARO may be being used, consciously or unconsciously, as a transparency facade. By denying AARO access, the secret program's managers ensure that AARO's public reports honestly conclude there's no extraordinary evidence, simply because the evidence was sequestered before reaching the investigators. The report also expresses concern that AARO is worryingly close to the organizations administering the alleged programs, raising doubts about the true independence of the office, previously led by Sean Kirkpatrick and now by John Kozlowski. And there's an even darker element, direct intimidation. Michael Schellenberger testified that his sources were warned that merely speaking or printing the name Immaculate Constellation could trigger government surveillance under FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. FISA was created to spy on terrorists and foreign spies. If it's being used against American citizens, journalists, and whistleblowers investigating government transparency, that represents a monumental abuse of power. During the congressional hearing, Representative Ana Paulina Luna directly challenged this intimidation, saying, "If I say Immaculate Constellation, am I going to be on some list? So come at me, bro." This rhetoric shows the conflict has escalated from a bureaucratic dispute to an open confrontation about civil rights and parliamentary privileges.
The final battlefield for the truth about Immaculate Constellation is the Capitol, through the legislative process of the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act that approves the military budget every year. On November 13, 2024, a historic hearing took place titled Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Exposing the Truth. Chaired by Representative Nancy Mace, this session served as the vehicle to officially publicize the leak. Nancy Mace executed a brilliant legal maneuver. She inserted the complete 12-page document about Immaculate Constellation into the congressional record. Once a document is in the congressional record, it enjoys certain legal protections and becomes public fact that the executive branch can no longer ignore or retroactively classify to suppress. During this hearing, Luis Elizondo, the former ATIP director, testified under oath. He confirmed that the U.S. government possesses crash retrieval programs for craft of non-human origin and that government officials have been physically injured during interactions with anomalous phenomena. This sworn testimony provided the necessary human corroboration for the technical document.
But the most devastating testimony may have been Michael Schellenberger simply reading excerpts from the report aloud, officially entering them into the public record. From that moment, denying the program's existence became politically unsustainable. The substantive legislative response came in the form of the UAP Disclosure Act of 2025, Senate Amendment 3111, introduced by Senators Mike Rounds, Republican, and Chuck Schumer, Democrat, as part of the NDAA for fiscal year 2026. This legislation is modeled on the JFK Records Act, which eventually forced disclosure of documents about Kennedy's assassination. The proposal includes 3 revolutionary elements. First, an independent civilian review board with subpoena power to review all records related to anomalous phenomena without depending on Pentagon or CIA approval.
Second, a presumption of disclosure, reversing the burden of proof. All records must be made public unless the president personally certifies that disclosure poses a national security risk. No more denials by mid-level bureaucrats. And third, the eminent domain clause, which is the most contentious. This provision would authorize the federal government to seize any technologies of non-human origin or biological materials in possession of private defense contractors like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman. Why does this matter? Because there are long-standing allegations that recovered technologies were transferred to the private sector through classified contracts, placing them beyond the reach of congressional investigations due to intellectual property protections and trade secrets. The eminent domain clause would eliminate that legal shield. As of December 2025, where we are now, this legislative battle is at its peak. The Senate passed the amendment as part of a larger package, but there's fierce opposition in the House of Representatives, led by figures connected to intelligence and defense committees, especially Representatives Mike Rogers and Mike Turner. Conference reports indicate that while some transparency provisions and whistleblower protections may survive, the forced disclosure mechanism in the law faces real risk of being removed from the final NDAA version. This would repeat the pattern of 2024, when similar legislation was gutted at the last minute during the reconciliation conference between House and Senate. However, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand secured partial victories, ensuring language that updates congressional briefing requirements on anomalous phenomena, keeping pressure on the Pentagon. What makes this battle even more fascinating is the bipartisan support. Democrats like Schumer and Gillibrand are allied with Republicans like Rounds and Representative Anna Paulina Luna. This isn't about partisan politics, it's about the fundamental principle that elected government must have control over the national security bureaucracy.
Now let's ask the crucial question. Is this really about UFOs or something bigger? The answer is that the battle over Immaculate Constellation completely transcends the UFO question. At its core, this is a conflict about constitutional sovereignty. Who really governs the United States? Representatives elected by the people, or an entrenched intelligence bureaucracy operating in the shadows for decades? The Whistleblower report explicitly accuses the executive branch of managing monumental issues without congressional authorization for possibly decades. If this is true, it represents a systematic violation of the National Security Act of 1947, which established the CIA and created the modern legal framework for intelligence oversight. That law was created precisely to prevent intelligence agencies from becoming states within the state, operating without accountability. And now we have substantial evidence that this is exactly the situation that exists. Let's consider the technological implications. If the incidents described in the report are accurate, the United States is monitoring technologies that dramatically exceed its own defense capabilities. Objects that force F-22 fighters to retreat, objects that hover over nuclear carriers, objects that transition between water and air without deceleration. This raises immense strategic questions. If these capabilities belong to a terrestrial foreign power, the United States faces an unprecedented national security crisis. If they belong to a non-human intelligence, the implications go beyond national security and enter the territory of existential questions about humanity's position in the universe. But regardless of these objects' origin, there's a fundamental governance problem. Congress has the constitutional responsibility to provide for the common defense and regulate the armed forces. How can they fulfill that responsibility if critical information about potential threats or revolutionary technologies is being actively hidden from them? And there is the question of scientific justice. If revolutionary technologies have been recovered and are being studied in secret programs, that represents a hijacking of human progress. Technologies that could solve the energy crisis, revolutionize transportation, or open new fields of physics are locked in underground facilities, accessible only to a handful of defense contractors and scientists with ultra-secret clearances. The national security argument, of course, is that disclosing this information would give adversaries an advantage. But this argument assumes that maintaining total secrecy is the only option. There are gradations of transparency. Congress could be fully informed in classified sessions. Scientists with clearances could study the phenomena without immediate public disclosure. The question isn't necessarily putting everything on Twitter tomorrow. The question is ending the current situation where not even the elected government has access. Now let's ask the crucial question. Is this really about UFOs or something bigger? The answer is that the battle over Immaculate Constellation completely transcends the UFO question. At its core, this is a conflict about constitutional sovereignty. Who really governs the United States? Representatives elected by the people, or an entrenched intelligence bureaucracy operating in the shadows for decades? The Whistleblower report explicitly accuses the executive branch of managing monumental issues without congressional authorization for possibly decades. If this is true, it represents a systematic violation of the National Security Act of 1947, which established the CIA and created the modern legal framework for intelligence oversight. That law was created precisely to prevent intelligence agencies from becoming states within the state, operating without accountability. And now we have substantial evidence that this is exactly the situation that exists. Let's consider the technological implications. If the incidents described in the report are accurate, the United States is monitoring technologies that dramatically exceed its own defense capabilities. Objects that force F-22 fighters to retreat, objects that hover over nuclear carriers, objects that transition between water and air without deceleration. This raises immense strategic questions. If these capabilities belong to a terrestrial foreign power, the United States faces an unprecedented national security crisis. If they belong to a non-human intelligence, the implications go beyond national security and enter the territory of existential questions about humanity's position in the universe. But regardless of these objects' origin, there's a fundamental governance problem. Congress has the constitutional responsibility to provide for the common defense and regulate the armed forces. How can they fulfill that responsibility if critical information about potential threats or revolutionary technologies is being actively hidden from them? And there is the question of scientific justice. If revolutionary technologies have been recovered and are being studied in secret programs, that represents a hijacking of human progress. Technologies that could solve the energy crisis, revolutionize transportation, or open new fields of physics are locked in underground facilities, accessible only to a handful of defense contractors and scientists with ultra-secret clearances. The national security argument, of course, is that disclosing this information would give adversaries an advantage. But this argument assumes that maintaining total secrecy is the only option. There are gradations of transparency. Congress could be fully informed in classified sessions. Scientists with clearances could study the phenomena without immediate public disclosure. The question isn't necessarily putting everything on Twitter tomorrow. The question is ending the current situation where not even the elected government has access.